Can a max level Cabbage-Pult solo all of PvZ2? So Cabbage-Pult is regarded as one of the most useless plants in PvZ2, and honestly, it is. It was originally introduced into PvZ1 as sort of a pea shooter replacement in the roof levels, but as PvZ2 doesn't have any roof levels, there's not much use for it. So I thought, why not take the Cabbage-Pult to max level and see if it can single-handedly defeat the entirety of the game that it's deemed useless in. Now last time I tested out pea shooter, and out of all the levels, it lost to 5 of them. So I'm interested to see if Cabbage-Pult's advantages and disadvantages make it a more viable plant at max level. But before we begin, let me lay down the rules for you. Rule number 1, I can only use Cabbage-Pult with one exception on night ages. Rule number 2, no power-ups, Zen Garden, or buying plant food. Rule number 3, skip all levels where we are forced to use other plants to beat the level, such as sun producers on sun production levels. And lastly, rule number 4, pre-placed plants are fine, but I'll try to shovel them to the best of my ability. Alright, let's begin. Once again, Ancient Egypt is too easy to be worth spending time going over every level, so here's almost all of it at once. And while these play out, I'll say that I preferred the plant food of the Cabbage-Pult much more than the pea shooters while doing this challenge, because it can attack basically every zombie on the screen, whereas pea shooters is singular lane focused and can take out bigger zombies like Gargs easier. Also quickly, if you end up enjoying the video, consider subscribing. Oh, and you might have noticed that I said this was almost every level, and that's because we actually have a very rare case scenario, the boss fight, which Cabbage-Pult appears in. So I actually got to do it, and it was pretty fun. The conveyor itself held 7 different plants in total, making the chances of me getting a Cabbage-Pult 1 in 7, heavily limiting my damage output. This first Cabbage-Pult I'd placed down suddenly got targeted by a rocket, so I had to time a plant food just right enough that as the rocket was hitting, the Cabbage-Pult would be doing its ability and completely negate the damage from the rocket, making it survive. After 30 seconds, we're finally given a second Cabbage-Pult, which essentially doubled our damage to Zomboss, but the third Cabbage-Pult took literally a whole minute to show up on the conveyor. So I was forced to stall and defeat all the zombies using the plant food that was pretty generously being given to us. And then came the rocket that very quickly tensed things up, because I saw that it was being launched last second and missed the plant food placement by literal milliseconds. And as we got our fourth Cabbage-Pult, the top lane lawnmower was taken by these 2 bucket heads. And remember, all while I was defending the lanes, I was also having to place down the other plants in the conveyor and quickly shovel them so that the conveyor wouldn't fill up. But as the level played on, I was given a couple more Cabbage-Pults who were defending nicely, and then this Garg showed up, which got pretty scary for a split second, but then it was annihilated by Zomboss's mistimed rocket. And after this, nothing too scary took place, as our Cabbage-Pults were slowly able to chip away Zomboss's health, securing our victory. And that was all of Ancient Egypt. Next up, Pirate Seas. Pirate Seas itself contains 0 challenge, so as all the levels play in the background, I should tell you the stats of the Cabbage-Pults. It costs 50 sun, has a recharge speed of 2.5 seconds, it has 900 HP, and 120 damage per lopped cabbage. These are pretty similar to pea shooters, but there's one major difference, the sun cost. Now 25 sun compared to 50 might not seem like a lot, but you'll see in Wild West why this is actually a devastating difference. And that was all of Pirate Seas. Next up, the Wild West. Day 1, nothing crazy happened. The only cool thing is that the cowboys lose their hat and their arm at the same time because of Cabbage-Pult's insane damage. Day 2 introduces the dynamite zombies, but other than that was easily handled. Day 3 has piano players. Day 5 has this metal cowboy who impressively survives 12 hits from the Cabbage-Pults. On day 6 I prep defenses. Day 7 had some satisfying plant food launches, but other than that, was pretty simple. Day 10 is where things got interesting, as the Chicken Wrangler zombie was introduced. I didn't think much of it at first, because the pea shooter was easily able to handle these guys. But then the Cabbage-Pult started getting eaten left and right, which woke me up a little bit. And I tried to strategically use plant food to kill the chickens, and it was kind of working until they reached the lawnmower in this middle lane. And I thought, oh, I can just heavy focus this middle lane and spam Cabbage-Pults. But then I saw my sun, and this is where the 25 sun difference is detrimental, as it only allows me to plant half as many Cabbage-Pults as I did pea shooters. And so I tried my best with what I was given, but was breached on this attempt. On the second attempt, however, I massively stalled the first couple of zombies by not attacking them so that I could properly prepare for the chickens. And to my surprise, this was actually enough to make it through this level. However, I knew a ton more chickens were waiting in the future levels. Day 11, we could spend 500 sun, and I did exactly that by planting 2 columns of Cabbage-Pults, who were of course enough to take down this level. Day 13, we first saw the bulls, and this first one made it farther than expected, but was taken down before doing any serious damage. And the rest of the level was also easily beaten. Day 14 was another level heavy in chicken wranglers, and it seemed fine as we reached the first big wave, but then as the level worked towards the second big wave, chickens just started appearing in the masses, and the first cluster of chickens took down basically all of my Cabbage-Pults and my lawnmowers. And as sun couldn't be obtained fast enough, the second massive cluster of chickens was easily able to breach our defenses and take us down. On the second attempt, I again didn't attack the starting zombie until the last second, so that I could build up my sun bank, and the first wave of chickens was a little scary because it took down a decent amount of my Cabbage-Pults, but thankfully all the lawnmowers survived until the last flag, ensuring our victory over them. Day 15, we could only lose 2 plants, and I initially panicked because the chickens could easily beat these guys, but thankfully no chickens were sent at all this level and we're able to beat it without trouble. Day 16, we defend this gentleman, and honestly, this has to be a top 5 skin in the game. It's so simple, yet so effective. We of course use the strategy of just spamming the Cabbage-Pult in one lane and keeping the walnut in that same lane. No, don't do it again.
Cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make.
Aside from that atrocity, I used a couple plant food to speed up the completion of this level. Day 17, I couldn't let the zombies trample the flowers, which again is very scary in the face of chickens, but once again some mystical being was looking into the future when creating this level and added 0 chickens just so Cabbage-Pult could succeed. So thoughtful of him. Day 18, I prepped some defenses. And I don't think this has happened before, but we actually lost on one of these. So on the second attempt, I used my plant food a little earlier than normal, which seemed to be helping until it wasn't. And we lost again. And sadly, this is the very first level that is unbeatable with just the max level Cabbage-Pult. There wasn't really much I could do, as even with all the sun spent and plant food used, there was still too many chickens. But there's a lot more of the game to cover, so let's see how much of it Cabbage-Pult can beat. Day 19, we could spend 2,000 sun and lose 2 plants, and as no chickens were sent, 500 sun was enough, and we didn't suffer any casualties. Day 21, we could spend 1,750 sun and had to protect these flowers, but this level felt kinda useless. I think the main difficulty factor of this level is supposed to be the dynamite guy, but as he literally dies before launching and sometimes straight up dying from fall damage, he isn't really a threat. I still don't know why that fall damage thing happens. Maybe he gets hit midair and then the animation happens when he lands. That's my guess. And this level was also easily beat. Day 23, however, was the worst combo of a level possible for the Cabbage-Pults, as we could only lose 2 plants and we couldn't let the zombies trample these flowers. And you might have already guessed it, this level contained chickens. I won't even waste time on this level. It was also impossible, as it didn't matter how many Cabbage-Pults I placed, the chickens always killed at least 2. Day 24 is the last level we play in the Wild West, and it was surprisingly difficult, again because of the chickens. I lost on my first 2 attempts as the chickens would just slowly eat away at my defenses and kept getting through. I was even given a generous amount of plant food, which wasn't initially doing all that much. But on my 3rd attempt, I put a couple brain cells together, and instead of plant fooding the Cabbage-Pults, I plant fooded the walnuts. And strategically, they were able to stall the chickens at just the right times, that all my lawnmowers survived until the last wave, ensuring that we would win. And only 1 lawnmower was actually used. The rest was taken care of by the Cabbage-Pults. That was all of the Wild West. Next up, Frostbite Caves. Frostbite Caves is always an interesting one because you never know how the plant is going to do against the windstorms. Days 1, 2, and 4 were easily beat as the storms were mild and posed no threat. Day 5 was a little scary because it was a conveyor level which again contained Cabbage-Pult, so I played it. The conveyor only contained 3 different plants, so the chance of getting a Cabbage-Pult was pretty decent at 1/3. The level heavily teases us by having a frozen column of Cabbage-Pults in the very back, which we can't unfreeze even with plant food. But this is where the Cabbage-Pult's plant food shines. Even though it can't hit behind itself, the plant food ability is able to break the ice of every Cabbage-Pult that is either in the same column or in any column in front of it. This was very clutch this level with the limited Cabbage-Pult we were being given, and although I lost a lawnmower, I was still able to beat day 5. Day 6, I started off by shoveling these sunflowers, and things got kind of scary at one point, but then I was able to place the Cabbage-Pult behind all the frozen plants and plant food it to set them all free, and with this, we beat day 6 as well. Day 7 again had some frozen plants to shovel up, and afterwards 2 columns of Cabbage-Pults were enough to beat the level. Day 9 had no windstorms, and the game was just trying to show off the dodos, so it's a pretty easy level. Day 11 had 4 flags and a lot of zombies in the last wave, but as the Cabbage-Pult's plant food is good against these types of clusters, day 11 was also easily taken down. Day 12 defenses were prepped. Day 13, we have to protect these flowers in the back, and the only scary zombie this level is this Gargantuar in the final wave, but thankfully the Cabbage-Pults were able to defeat it. Day 15, we're given these Pepper Pults to protect, but like last time, they end up protecting your Cabbage-Pults from the storms, which very much simplifies this level for us. Day 17, I shoveled up these Fume Shroom, and then the rest of the level was easily beat. Day 19, there are a lot of windstorms, so I left this second column from the back open, just in case I needed to place down a Cabbage-Pult and plant food it. And with this strategy, day 19 was defeated. Day 20, I again used the same strategy of using plant food to break the ice. Day 22 was a little scary as it contained weasels, giving me Wild West flashbacks, but it seemed that the weasels came in smaller clusters, so the Cabbage-Pult were able to defeat them with some well-timed plant food. Day 23, we protect these charred guards, and it got a little scary during the second flag because these weasels were getting dangerously close, but thankfully we held them off and were able to defeat day 23. Day 26 had 4 flags and weasels, but was easily beat. Day 27, we protect these Rhotabega, and with no windstorms, this task was easily completed. Day 28, I prepped defenses. That was all of Frostbite Caves. Next up, Lost City. Lost City is a world in which Cabbage-Pult gets hard countered by the Umbrella Zombie. So let's see if I was able to beat them. Days 1, 2, 4, and 6 were all easily beat as the Umbrella Zombie was yet to be seen. But then day 7, it was spotted in the top lane. And similarly to how the pea shooter beat the shovel zombie, the only way I can beat the Umbrella Zombie is by stalling her until the last flag and then letting the lawnmowers take care of them. Thankfully, only 4 Umbrella Zombies were sent this level, so I was able to beat them pretty easily. Day 10 again had Umbrella Zombies, and at first it seemed scary because this one was sent pretty early on, meaning I would have to stall it for longer. But thankfully it was only one that was sent this early, and the rest came in basically towards the end of the level, allowing the lawnmowers to beat all 5 that were sent in. Day 11, they only send 1 Umbrella Zombie, so the level itself is pretty easy, but I should also mention that it's very lucky that these gold tiles exist in this particular world, because without them, Cabbage-Pult would have probably lost every level that contained an Umbrella Zombie. Day 15 almost looked like we were going to lose again, because I thought the game would surely send Umbrella Zombies into the Aki's lanes to make it a challenge, but for some reason they don't, so we just stalled these ones in the middle and beat the level. Day 17, again only 2 Umbrella Zombies towards the end, so they were stalled easily for the lawnmowers. Day 19 also only had 2 Umbrella Zombies, so it was easily beat. Day 20 had a fair amount of stalling as a couple Umbrellas were sent in, but as soon as the last wave appeared, I stopped stalling and we beat the level. Day 23 was the first Lost City level that was able to beat me on the first attempt, because this Gargantuar comboed with this Umbrella Zombie and they made it impossible to stall or kill them. So they reached the lawnmower, and then the last flag sent in another Umbrella Zombie, taking us down. On the second attempt, I heavily overplaced Cabbage-Pults in the middle lane to try and stall them out until the last flag was sent, and thankfully the stall was just good enough for this to work and we beat day 23. Day 24, we have to stop the zombies from trampling these flowers, and at first I thought, oh, I could just launch this middle mower, but then 3 more umbrellas were sent in 3 different lanes. And as there weren't any dragonflies that could proc the lawnmowers either, this level was also impossible. Day 25 was much easier though, with only 1 umbrella sent. Same with day 26. Day 27 was probably the most chaotic level so far, with the turquoise skull zombies decimating my Cabbage-Pults. But thankfully, the plant food power was able to carry me to the end, where lawnmowers dealt with the remaining zombies. Day 29, this bottom lane got very scary, as the umbrella was protecting too many zombies, but I was able to stall them just well enough for the last wave to come in and the lawnmowers to take care of them. Day 30 was a stressful one because these mold colonies heavily limit my stalling capabilities, and 2 umbrellas got through very early on, and I almost restarted the level. But then as the last wave came in and there was only 1 umbrella zombie and it was sent in a different lane, it actually worked out. That was all of Lost City. Next up, the far future. I'm super speeding through the far future because there isn't anything noteworthy that happens on it. The power tiles make it super easy to beat basically every level, and honestly, even without the power tiles, the far future would have been beat with no losses. And that was all of the far future. Next up, the spooky Dark Ages. In the Dark Ages, I supplement Sun using Gold Bloom because otherwise it would be impossible, and nights 1, 2, and 3 didn't contain any gestures or other difficult zombies, so they're pretty easily beat. Day 5, however, did, and I tried to stall at this gesture for as long as I could, and I did pretty well, but these other gestures then came in and would just hurl the cabbage back in a straight line and at very high speeds, which freaked me out, and I kind of panic plant fooded a Cabbage-Pult mainly to take out these other 2 regular zombies in order to speed up the wave, but the plant food ability actually just ended up killing the gestures. and this completely trivialized most of the Dark Ages. That's why I'm super speeding all the way to night 19. Even though Cabbage-Pult lost to those Wild West levels, this was actually its chance to catch up to Pea Shooter, because the Dark Ages is where the Pea Shooter struggled the most. And here's night 19. And I thought this would actually be a difficult level because basically all the strong enemies are sent and we have to defend this wimpy magnet shroom. But honestly, it ended up being pretty easy as the two Gargs were literally only set in lanes without magnet shrooms, so we were able to beat all of Night Ages without losing on a single level. Next up, the Neon Mixtape Tour and the Jurassic Marsh. I'm combining both of these worlds and super speeding through them because neither world had a level that had me genuinely worried that I would lose. There were a couple levels here and there that would take a lawnmower because our Gargantuar would get through, but nothing worth going over the entire world for. And that was all of the Neon Mixtape Tour and the Jurassic Marsh. Next up, Big Wave Beach. Day 1 of Big Wave Beach is very simple as only one column is enough to fend off the zombies. Day 2 I used 2 columns and some plant food because the level contained tankier zombies like the bucketheads. Day 4 was the same as day 2. Day 6 was pretty cool because I learned something that somehow I didn't know, and that was that Cabbage-Pult can hit the snorkel zombies when they're underwater. Now this not may sound like too crazy of a discovery, but I'll show you later on why this is actually huge, and as the rest of this level was pretty simple, it was beat with ease. Day 7 starts off intimidating because we only have lily pads that we can place the Cabbage-Pults on, but as I begin to place the pults down and plant food them, it creates more space for me to place them because the lily pads underneath also get plant fooded. And of course, the mini rule for this is that a Cabbage-Pult has to be on the lily pad for me to be able to plant food it. And with this strategy, we took down day 7. Day 9 has some mold colonies limiting a lot of space, but then also 4 flags on top of that. But surprisingly, only 2 Cabbage-Pults in each lane were able to handle the entirety of the level. Day 11 has surfer zombies who normally are pretty scary, but the high damage of the Cabbage-Pults defeats them before they make it too far. And with that, day 11 was beat. Day 12, I prepped some defenses. Day 15 is why Cabbage-Pults being able to hit the snorkel zombies is so important. This level has us defend potato mines, and with the pea shooter and also the torchwood, this level was impossible because the snorkel zombie just instantly triggers the mines. But with Cabbage-Pult, this actually becomes possible, giving Cabbage-Pult another 1-up on pea shooter. But even though the snorkels became easy, there are still some sudden zombies that appear with a low tide, and they make it pretty close, but not close enough, in the end allowing us to beat this level. Day 17 has the octopus zombies who later on make some levels pretty tough, but this time they're pretty easy to beat. Day 19 didn't have anything special in it, so again it was beat easily. Day 20 is another one of the levels that only allows us to use lily pads for placement, and this again is countered with plant food. But then the level also sends a Gargantuar at the end, who makes it pretty close to the end, but the damage is just good enough to beat it. Day 22 was an easy level. Day 23 was also a fun and easy level as we made use of the banana launchers to defeat the fishermen and Gargantuar zombies. This top lane almost got a little shiesty because of the octo zombie, but we're able to beat them. Day 25 gives us 3000 sun to work with, and I end up using 950 to beat the entire level. Day 27, again, only 5 lily pads and no land to start off, but as the level progressed, I was able to slowly get more and more Cabbage-Pult down, in the end beating the level. Day 28, we're only allowed to lose 5 plants and end up losing none. Day 29, 6 Cabbage-Pult were initially prepped. Towards the end, this Octo-Zombie Fisherman combo was being annoying, but we're able to defeat them. Day 30, I was genuinely scared because I remembered that the Torchwood had the same sun cost and lost to this level, but I was able to continually place down Cabbage-Pults and plant food them to take down the Fisherman zombies, which allowed us to win. That was all of Big Wave Beach. Next up, Modern Day, where we see some old enemies again. Day 1 of Modern Day was pretty easy. Day 2 got a little scary in the middle lane, but we beat it as well. Day 4 was mainly Far Future and Neon Mixtape Tour zombies, so it was also easily beat. Day 5, however, sent in some early umbrellas, and it was 2 at the same time, making the stall insanely difficult, because remember, Lost City had those gold tiles that were helping us with sun production, but in Modern Day, I can only rely on the sun falling from the sky, and because of this, I was not able to stall until the last flag, as many more umbrellas were sent right after the first flag, so they took the lawnmowers. But as my luck would have it, no more umbrellas were sent, and we actually beat this level first try. Day 7 was chaotic, because it introduced my least favorite zombie in this entire entire Cabbage-Pult challenge, and it was the newspaper zombies. Like, look at this guy just blitzing through my defenses with the help of Octozombie. Oh yeah, this level also had a lot of Octozombies, but within the chaos, the Cabbage-Pult and lawnmowers were still able to pull through. Day 10 was an easy level with power tiles and no big threats. Day 11 had a couple of newspaper zombies, but I was able to defeat them before they did anything too crazy for now. Day 12 is where things heated up a little, because I could only lose 10 plants and the game sent in an early umbrella, meaning I couldn't infinitely sacrifice Cabbage-Pults for stall. I was scared, but thought this is probably still possible, but then the game read my mind while I was thinking that, and then with some voodoo magic sent in the biggest threat from this challenge, the chickens. And honestly, I tried my best, but I could neither stall nor keep enough cabbage alive to defeat this level, so day 12 of modern day was also impossible. Days 15, 17, 18, 20, and 21 were all easily beat. Day 23 again sent the devious newspaper and Octozombie combo, which took out this lawnmower at the bottom and then another 3 lawnmowers to beat the level. Day 24 was pretty simple. Day 26 I lost 2 lawnmowers because it contained a lot of tanky zombies, but I was able to still win. Day 29 was also easily beat, and here it was, day 30, my least favorite level of this entire challenge, and also the main reason the newspaper zombie was my least favorite zombie. I was tasked to protect these flowers from being trampled on against a lot of strong zombies such as Gargs, All-Stars, Balloons, and of course the newspaper zombie. And on my first attempt I failed, as I didn't see this newspaper zombie, but for some reason I just believed that this level had to be possible. So I tried over and over and over again. I just kept playing the level with false hope, in the end having to accept defeat because I couldn't find any way to stop all the crazy zombies, making this level also impossible. The last level of the entire challenge, day 31, had a couple of annoying gestures, but overall was pretty easy. And that finishes off the challenge. To tally up the scores, Pea Shooter had lost to 5 levels, so let's see how many Cabbage-Pult lost to. Drumroll. It was also 5. By numbers alone, I can't say who's better, so I'll let y'all decide in the comments. They each had their own different struggles and advantages, but next time, things are going to get much more complicated, so stay tuned for that. Okay, bye bye.